Hello, folks. Wondering whether we should get started with some of the housekeeping uh, information prior to getting going with the actual formal content of this side event for the Migration Network Hub soft launch. My name is Jenna Hennebree, and I will do my best throughout some Q&A later on to facilitate some meaningful dialogue. But for now, why don't we take a minute and just make sure that everyone is aware of the key sort of process. If you haven't been participating thus far, you may have some hiccups along the way. And even those of us who have been participating along the way have had quite a number. At least sometimes I find it very difficult in this format. So a couple of key things just to note as we go. Basically, you can request to speak by clicking the button in the bottom right-hand corner. If you'd like to, you can also indicate in the chat function if you have a question or would like to raise an issue or add any additional information or comment. And then once your request is approved by the moderator, you're able to unmute yourself and turn your video on by clicking on the microphone button and the camera button that are at the middle of the bottom of the screen. And please avoid clicking on the release the mic button, which I think I just did a few minutes ago, as this would remove you from the floor, and then you have to request to speak again before taking the floor. When you take the floor, please kindly introduce yourself by name and organization you represent, and also ensure to the best of your ability to keep your interventions short, as we all struggle to do, myself included. And yeah, we look forward to having a good dialogue throughout the event. And if there's any questions as we proceed, please do write in the comment box. You can message to me if you have concerns or questions, and I can do my best to facilitate those. And if you're having technical issues, I can try to discuss it with the operator. So if you're having technical difficulty, you can also reach out directly to the operator by using the operator tab in the messaging box. You can also document if there's background documents. I know that we're going to be sharing screens, so you're going to get to see a glimpse of the hub, but there may be some additional documents that are shared as well. You'll be able to access those. And also just to note that the meeting is recorded. And if you have any concerns about that, please let us know in the messaging box. So I think I've covered everything in terms of housekeeping. And as I say, one last thing is that if you want to, you can have different languages through the audio channels, English, French, and Spanish button on the left, if you'd like. Otherwise, the floor option allows you to hear the original language. And we look forward to a valuable conversation. So shortly we'll begin. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we're just about ready to get rolling here on the network, Migration Network Hub soft launch, and we're going to turn it over to Wen Li, who's Director, Department of International Cooperation and Partnerships from the IOM, on behalf of the coordinator for the UN Network on Migration Network.
Thank you, Jenna.
You have the floor.
Thanks. Excellencies and colleagues, good evening. Welcome to this soft launch of the Migration Network Hub. As you know, the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration provides for a capacity building mechanism consisting of 3 elements to support member states in implementing GCM. The Startup Fund, or what is called the Migration Multi-Partner Trust Fund, started in July this year, and you may have heard about its operation in the network annual meeting earlier today. The other 2 interlinked components are Connection Hub and Global Knowledge Platform, for which we will use the working title of Migration Network Hub. The objective of the Migration Network Hub is to provide trustworthy evidence and information for migration decision-making, research, and service in order to facilitate better planning and collaboration on migration management. It's aimed to be a virtual meeting space for the international community where governments, stakeholders, partners, and experts can access, request, and share migration-related information and services. The establishment of the Migration Network Hub was a key priority of the Migration Network's work plan this year. In line with an evidence-based whole of government and society approach, the Migration Network Hub was developed by a network working group led by IOM and supported by UN agencies and stakeholders. The development of the hub was based on a needs assessment building on feedback from governments and stakeholders and analysis of the gaps of existing platforms that can be addressed by the hub. The hub was created to offer a large trove of information accessible in an inclusive and user-friendly way by curating, not just collecting information, most relevant content for GCM implementation. It thus aims at facilitating the accessibility of knowledge and peer-to-peer learning and sharing of solutions at different levels to promote safe, orderly, and regular migration. We initiated some of its features in July this year, and our next speaker, Ms. Britta Behrendt from German Interior Ministry, will brief us in a minute on the first discussion space dedicated to digitalization and migration, where experts and practitioners have been able to exchange experiences and learn from each other. Apart from the discussion forums, the hub already features a content upload function and a roster of over 100 peer reviewers to this day, including many from academia, NGOs, UN agencies, and other stakeholders, practitioners who have been supporting us with vetting the content that you can see today. There's also an existing section on the UN Network on Migration website that hosts the hub for the regional reviews, including inputs by member states and stakeholders. Today, we are presenting to you a sneak preview of the new features of the hub. We will hear more details from Suzanne Meld from IOM Global Migration Data Analysis Center in Berlin, and Ben Lewis from OHCHR, followed by a reflection by Ambassador Socorro Flores de Lira, permanent representative of Mexico to the UN in Geneva. On behalf of the Director General Vitorino and the coordinator of the UN Migration Network, and on behalf of IOM chairing the working group developing the new hub, I would like to thank all members of the working group for their input and support, effectively putting the whole of the UN system approach into practice, as well as all stakeholders, and in particular the financial support by the government of Germany that enabled us to create the discussion space on migration and digitalization. Next year, we will work on translation of the main pages, build a repository of existing practices, and improve other web development. We will appreciate continued support, including financial assistance from member states and all our partners. In the meantime, we look forward to your feedback on the hub, which will help us fine-tune it for its public launch in the first quarter of next year. Thank you for your attention. With that, I think I'm passing on the floor to Ms. Britta Behrendt, Director of General Issues of Migration and Refugee Policy and EU Freedom of Movement.
I actually
from-
think we're gonna move on, and we'll end up coming back to Britta a little bit later. Apologies, there's been a few challenges, so I'm gonna actually pass it off now to Suzanne Melde, who is basically going to talk about the hub. She's the senior analyst and chair of the core working group 1.2 of the UN Network on Migration on the Knowledge Platform and Connection Hub. So I'll turn it over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Jenna, and very warm welcome also from my side. What we would like to do is to show you a bit of a preview of what we've been working on in the past year to get your feedback, what you think, if that's a bit in line with what you had in mind. Just to say, I will be sharing my screen and you will receive the link and the password to see all this content after the presentation, so you can also play around. We just want to make sure that the server doesn't crash when everyone is trying to access the page. So as Wen Lee has already said, the Migration Network Hub is an integrated platform that provides a virtual meeting space with the aim to support, of course, GCM follow-up and implementation by facilitating discussions, expert consultation, and knowledge sharing. It has two key features. One feature is the community of practice, which can be understood as a group of people who have a common interest, a topic they work on, and that they want to improve on how to work on that together by regularly interacting. And the second part, of course, is the global knowledge repository. And we have different approaches, including content creation, using one platform and the whole of UN approach. And with that, I would like to show you a bit from the landing page that we're working on, which you can access, as you can see later on. It's not public yet from the network website. There is a tab on Migration Network Hub, and there's some functions that are already live there. So as part of the Connection Hub part, so the interactive element that also Jonathan Prentice, the head of the Secretariat, mentioned yesterday, we have discussion forums. And I think we'll hear a bit more about the speaker, Britta Behrendt, about this. So I just wanted to show you a bit. So there's interaction possible. There's discussion spaces, so different threads where different stakeholders have commented. Here on the right-hand side, you can see some relevant links on that topic of migration and digitalization, events that have taken place, resources, and videos. In another part of the interactive element is the expert database. We have seen in the needs assessment that was commissioned in line with an evidence-based approach last year, and also the work plan of the network, that governments are very much interested in, and others reaching out to experts for support on different migration topics. And so we have built on an existing expert database by the Migration Research Hub of EMISCO, which is a European research network funded by the EU. And we have enlarged that. And so you can contact more than 680 experts. There is a contact form, so you can get in contact with them. We won't be sharing their emails or yours. In the first instance, you have to sign up to be able to use that function. And then you can reach out to different experts if you want to know about trafficking in Tanzania or labor migration in Argentina, for instance. And so these are kind of the interactive spaces and the discussion spaces that also Laurel mentioned in the last session of the annual meeting. The second part, and large part of the Migration Network Hub, is the underlying knowledge repository. You can see here, we tried to also visualize the 360-degree vision with these icons. There, what we're trying to do is signposting key references, database platforms on each GCM objective. You can select that here, and cross-cutting themes, so the guiding principles, and we'll hear more from Ben Lewis from OHCHR what that looks like. The idea there is not to duplicate anything, but really to provide an entry point, a signposting of what's out there. So, if you want to look at, for instance, data, the first objective, what are some of the key platforms and key resources that you should be looking at. We also are linking to content from the regional reviews that was also mentioned. You can see here on the left the types of content. So when you scroll down, you can see, for instance, also the working groups that exist. They also have line up with the GCM objectives. So when you search for a certain topic, those will also appear. And then, as I mentioned, also the regional review processes. What's important about this knowledge platform part is that it's very inclusive. So this content can be uploaded by anyone. You can see here, there's an upload function. So anyone, at global, regional, national, local level, and it then undergoes a peer review. The idea is really to make sure that the content curation has a, let's say, quality control aspect and is also user-friendly. So the peer reviews look at what are the most relevant links, tools, resources for each topic. And we also try to describe, not just in an executive summary what the document is about, but really, for which target group is it? Is it for border officials? Is it for those working with migrants? So you really have an idea, if, in which case you should look at what resource. And just to mention on the peer review, we have one UN peer reviewer usually and 2 non-UN peer reviewers. We've tried to have a global or regional balance. We have put this roster live, as Wen-Li mentioned, in July this year. We have more than 120 experts as part of that peer review roster from almost 50 countries. As you can see here, the darker shades of blue mean there's more peer reviewers like in Italy, Germany, the US, India. So we're trying to increase that regional balance a bit more. And it's very important to keep in mind that we really try to make sure that there's multi-stakeholder engagement. It was actually a lot more difficult to find UN peer reviewers, so more than 2/3 of those 120 peer reviewers are non-UN experts. And then another aspect is that what you can see up here in the filter as well on the top right is you can order the content by global, regional, national, and local content. The local content also falls under national. We really want to make sure that there's a kind of one-stop shop entry point, but then that this content will be kept updated in a decentralized approach. And we're already in contact with some of the regional networks for that. And you're probably wondering, why do we call this a soft launch? There's still a couple of things that are in the works. Of course, we want to get your feedback. There's a couple of pages where we're still mapping content with other UN agencies. Some of the peer reviews are still ongoing. Usually the 3rd peer reviewer, the end of the year is usually busy time, so not everyone was able to look at that. And also, as I mentioned, we want to look a bit more at regional balance. We have right now not included content from the regional national levels if it was just for 1 or 2 regions, to make sure that it's not biased and just covering certain regions. And what are the next steps? Looking ahead, we will be doing a pilot testing in January next year. My colleague will share the link where you can sign up. It's going to be on the 21st of January 2021, so easy to remember, 21st January 2021, from 3 to 4:30 p.m. CET, so Geneva, Berlin, Vienna time. You can also already, will be a link there for a survey that you can already fill in now. During that event, we will have a couple of tasks for those participating, so we're really inviting everyone to join, but you can also, of course, sign up and receive the link and password again via email, and then fill in that survey from at any time you wish in that period where we will have the pilot testing. And then we want to include that feedback and go live with a public launch at the end or towards the end of the 1st quarter of 2021. We will also next year be developing a repository of existing practices and the on-demand request function, as also mentioned in the GCM text. And as Wendy also mentioned, we want to translate some of the core pages that are explaining some of the content here into the other 5 UN languages. I would just like to mention that whenever there is a resource, handbook, link, or platform available in other languages, we have flagged that in the descriptive text, so you can also already access that. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Ben to show you one of the curated pages on human rights. Thank you.
I'm actually going to again let everyone know that we're a little bit off kilter with our timing. Apologies. We're going to actually turn it over to the respected representative from Germany, who I see is here already. Welcome, Britta Bardent. I'm not sure I'm going to say your name correctly. Apologies, I probably mispronounced it. Who is the Director for General Issues of Migration and Refugee Policy and EU Freedom of Movement from the German Federal Ministry of the Interior, Building and Communities. So you have the floor. Go ahead, Britta.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you so much. Actually, I want to keep it really, really short because I think time is running and I'm really curious about the next items. But I actually just want to point out that the Migration Network Hub and the work of Susanne Merde really saved one of our major projects of the German presidency, because actually, as some of you might know, that we started in July to have a process called Migration 4.0, which was focusing on the digital transformation of migration management. And as we were planning this process, we wanted to have a big kick-off event in July in Munich, and then have several workshops or so-called deep dives, for example, on migration forecasting, on communication. And we were planning like this and had already some major issues, but then COVID-19 arrived and we soon realized that we couldn't realize all our plans and implement it the way we planned it to be. So as we were already cooperating quite closely with JIMDAG in Berlin, with Frank and Susanne and Jasper, and they were part of our team for the part of the migration forecasting and the data part, we thought, okay, I think we would have to transform the whole process into a virtual process. And so we did actually. We had this kickoff meeting in July as a virtual meeting, and then we organized several deep dives over the last 6 months. And last week, on the 10th of December, we had our final meeting, Migration 4.0 conclusions. And during these 6 months, we had this migration network hub as a kind of open space for discussions and for cooperation and communication. And for us, this really proved to be really, really valuable. So we are really thankful to Susanne and her team that they made this possible for us. Thank you very much. You really saved our project. That's it from my side. So thanks.
I'm sure that's excellent to hear for them. I think we'll pass on now to Ben Lewis, who is the Human Rights Officer and from the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks very much, Jenna. Pleasure to be here. And OSCHR had submitted a number of resources and reviewed some of the thematic pages to this hub, so we're very happy to be here in support of this launch event, soft launch event today. So 2 key features of the GCM and therefore unique and important elements of this platform are, of course, the GCM's 360-degree approach or vision, and these 10 cross-cutting and interdependent guiding principles, which are really foundational elements of the GCM. And as we've heard over the past 2 days of the annual meeting from member states and the UN system and a wide number of civil society and other stakeholder partners, this vision and cross-cutting principles are really essential elements of making the GCM work. And this means not looking at any of the GCM objectives in isolation, but truly taking a holistic approach and ensuring that, among other things, that the GCM implementation reflects a person-centered, human rights-based, child-sensitive, gender-responsive, whole of society, whole of government approaches, and so on and so on. So the way this is reflected in the current version of the platform, and I say current version because, of course, this is a work in progress and will always be a work in progress as we continually strengthen and refine the hub so that it remains a valuable resource moving forward. But to demonstrate how this looks in the current version, I wanted to share my screen, and I'll, I hope I can do this. Voila. And yeah, Great. So hopefully you can all see me now. As Suzanne already mentioned, there are these two tabs at the very top, or sort of drop-down menus. One is for all of the GCM's 23 objectives, and the other is for the 10 cross-cutting and interdependent guiding principles. So I'll just walk you through how this looks for the human rights guiding principle, which we, of course, supported. They start by just cutting and pasting the language of the GCM where the guiding principles are laid out. And then they have a brief section where all of the objectives of the GCM, where human rights in this case are explicitly mentioned, are referenced. So you could go look for specific references if you wish. That's not to say that the guiding principles are limited only to where they are explicitly mentioned in the text. That's the whole nature of them being cross-cutting and interdependent. They intersect all of the GCM, but you have a quick reference guide there if you wish. And then there are several relevant links and resources to issues of human rights, as well as projects, videos, etc. Just as a quick example, if we look at the human rights, the Universal Human Rights Index, you have an external link where you could go and look for what the human rights mechanisms have said for your specific country vis-a-vis a specific group, such as migrants are here, for example. So just one example of how this is reflected on the web page. But then another neat feature that hopefully will be really useful is blending the cross-cutting themes with specific objectives. And maybe in future iterations, it will be possible to look at several objectives at the same time. But if we looked, for example, at human rights and border management, and then you click apply if it doesn't automatically pop up, but I think it does. Here you have both the human rights principle as well as the objective on border management, and again, relevant links, resources, etc. So in a nutshell, that's how the cross-cutting themes or guiding principles and the objectives are structured. And maybe I'll just end quickly with 4 quick questions for the Q&A that I hope will be interesting, that are based on the feedback we've heard during the network's annual meeting these last couple of days. One was a constant reminder of the importance of human rights to the GCM, and I'm happy to say this is coming from other folks besides OHCHR. But so one of the key questions is, how do we ensure that the platform is really representing projects, programs, and initiatives that are human rights-based, person-centered, child-sensitive, gender-responsive. So how do we continue to ensure that and strengthen that over time? Second question for the group is, we've heard about the incredible strength and diversity of the many thousands of civil society stakeholders and partners, and how they're ready to actively contribute to the GCM implementation, including contributing to the knowledge platform. So how do we ensure that the whole of society is reflected both in the resources that find themselves onto the knowledge platform, as well as the process for making those decisions about what gets on and what doesn't, and the process of reviewing and vetting those resources? And how do we strengthen that moving forward as well, acknowledging that work has, of course, already been done in that respect. The third question is, and this was mentioned by Jonathan just in the closing remarks, the Hub should really be a place to ensure the sustainability of the work of the network moving forward. So especially as these initial working groups are closing and new working groups are going to be started, how do we ensure that the platform is a place to ensure the ongoing sustainability of our efforts, and that it's not just documents sitting on a web page that never get read, but it's actually more dynamic and focused on implementation at the field level. And fourth and finally, this was another comment made in the closing remarks, understanding that not all migration policies and programs are the same. How do we best identify and highlight and promote practices that are truly good practices or positive practices, as opposed to simply existing practices, and as a way of supporting ambitious and human rights-based GCM implementation through this hub? So those are some questions for group reflection. With that, I'll end. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was particularly interesting from my vantage point. I'm getting very excited about this hub. And I think now the plan is to turn it over to the Honorable Ambassador Socorro Flores. Embajador. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It is really a pleasure to be here today. And I want to thank the UN Network on Migration for their invitation. I really welcome the launch of the Migration Knowledge Platform. Achieving a safe, orderly, and regular migration that benefits all requires quality data, evidence, and information. And the platform is an incredibly useful tool. We expect it to be a one-stop shop for policymakers, journalists, and in general, all persons interested in obtaining reliable migration data globally. While preparing my remarks, I had the opportunity to explore the platform's website, and we also have an opportunity to go through it thanks to Ben and Susan's presentations. And I very much appreciate how it integrates multiple sources of data, making it easier to navigate an increasingly complex landscape on migration information that is currently fragmented across different organizations and presented in different formats. This is very friendly, and I really want to congratulate you for that. According to IOM, the number of international migrants is growing at a faster rate than the world's population, and in 2020, it reached more than 270 million. We are witnessing unprecedented levels of human mobility, with migrants present in every country. This reality poses challenges, but also creates opportunities for the sustainable development of those countries, which can only be leveraged with evidence-based migration policies. Especially in critical times, such as those faced today with COVID-19 and its impacts on human mobility, it is important to ensure that responses to migration are based on sound facts, trustworthy data, and accurate analysis. The Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration provides renewed momentum to invest in migration data. While Objective 1 of the Compact focuses entirely on evidence on migration, robust national level data are required for developing national migration policies across all thematic areas covered by this 360-degree cooperative framework. For example, to match labor market shortages in countries of destination with labor supply in countries of origin, data on skill profiles is indispensable to develop migrant worker programs that meet those needs. Data on unsafe migration and its impact on the enjoyment of human rights is necessary to ensure governments provide targeted assistance to migrants in vulnerable situations. Migrants' employment rate in destination countries can help assess the level of integration of migrants and inform inclusive public programs. Moreover, the effective use of data can help transform the migration debate, which often is driven by perceptions rather than on evidence. As champion in the implementation of the GCM, Mexico is committed with generating and disseminating relevant and objective information on migration. And I will share with you some examples of the tools we have in place. First, Mexico included migration-relevant questions in its census to measure the number of migrants residing in the country and the size of the Mexican diaspora. The 2020 census included questions aimed at better understanding migration drivers. Second, we apply annual specialized surveys at the northern and southern borders of the country. These surveys generate valuable data about the characteristics of migrant populations, their vulnerabilities, and specific needs, which inform public programs and services to protect the human rights of migrants and promote their inclusion, among other aspects. Another example is the International Migration Observatory that we established and that is run by the National Population Council. This collaborative platform of government agencies, academic institutions, civil society, and the private sector generates knowledge and evidence on migration. One of its yearly publications is the Yearbook for Migration and Remittances, prepared in cooperation with the banking sector. The 2020 edition included data on the effects of the pandemic in the flow of remittances to Mexico. And the last example, the National Migration Institute adapted its administrative data systems to start collecting disaggregated information on migrants in vulnerable situations. This data will provide information to design targeted services for migrant children, women victims of crimes, older adults, indigenous people, people with disabilities, and the LGBT migrant population, to give you an example. Dear colleagues, no doubt that more and better data are needed to identify increasingly complex migration challenges, design more comprehensive responses, monitor their implementation, and evaluate the effects of migration programs and policies in the next decades. We are glad to have the Knowledge Platform and hope it encourages greater technical cooperation across and within regions in the implementation of the GCM. I really appreciate your work and congratulate you for presenting us such a good platform, and we will continue working with you to make sure that we benefit from the GCM. Thank you so much for inviting me again.
Muchísimas gracias, embajador. Very important comments, particularly around the important role of the hub in facilitating access to data and in ensuring evidence-based approaches to migration. And as we move forward, I think it's going to be particularly important, as Ben has mentioned, in terms of the longevity of this endeavor, and that we have the hub to be able to share knowledge, but also kind of build a collective community moving forward that will hopefully continue for many years. So thank you very much. Now, typically, this is the point in which we start to have opportunity to have discussion and hear from folks in the audience, where you can ask questions of any of the folks who have presented, who are still on the call, particular questions you may have around the hub. For example, would be the chance you have now to do so, and please do pay attention to some of the points that have been raised so far. The questions, for example, that Ben highlighted for us around ensuring that the resources are fact-based, but also human rights-based, and the engagement of different groups and organizations in the hub. How can we make the hub, work for your interests? I think hearing from folks about how they think the hub can work for them, I think that would be excellent. I think it's really interesting, though. I'm reflecting about the reality that we have in front of us, that I'm excited that the platform and what we're doing here is real, because it's gone virtual, and I think that's a pretty interesting turn of events that says that. I think anyway, let's get on with the discussion. If people want to speak up, please let us know through the chat or the request to speak function. I'm looking now to see if there have been requests from the floor to speak. Maybe we have some issues with our microphones, or potentially with the system here. Have we had requests from the floor to speak at this point? Okay, are there people that would have some interest in weighing in on the hub, have some questions about how it might connect with the work that they're doing across agencies or organizations? Please do let us know. Also, just reminding folks that there's the pilot testing event that'll come up in January, which I think is particularly exciting. From my standpoint, I'm thrilled to see this hub become a reality when it becomes virtual, and in part because I think it really does enable the kinds of things we've been talking about over the last couple of days, which is a kind of meaningful engagement with a whole range of stakeholders. and I think it's an opportunity for that. One of the things that I have been thinking about is also how important it will be for those things that don't have really strongly embedded functionality already in the network. So the guiding principles, for example, I think we really need to use the hub to its ability to help highlight those. And obviously gender is one that I have pointed to previously and will continue to do, but linking to resources like the Gender Hub that we are developing, funded by Canada, but others out there that I think are equally, if not better, developed and valuable to connect to. I think we want to do our best to try to connect into as many resources and to facilitate engagement through this hub. Just looking again to see if we have other requests on the floor, from the floor, requests to speak. Maybe I'll turn it back over to the panelists to see if they have additional comments they'd like to add.
Hello?
I think, Jenna, we have someone who has a question.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't see it anywhere.
there.
Please go ahead.
Hello, can I say something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I want to go speak French because I'm not speaking good English. Maybe, I think maybe people can understand me. So, je voulais juste intervenir pour j'ai suivi l'intervention et merci beaucoup pour tout le travail qui a été fait, voilà, qui est en train d'encore être fait dans le cadre de ce réseau. Mais je voulais juste intervenir pour non seulement marquer aussi l'importance de prendre en considération surtout, comment dirais-je, les groupes de communautés migrantes, mais communautaires aussi, parce que aujourd'hui, si on voit dans le réseau, les grandes organisations ont dominé la place d'occupation et que les petites organisations qui aujourd'hui qui sont plus proches des zones ou des endroits où on est en train de travailler et de faire tous ces différents travaux sont absents dans le cadre de ce réseau. Donc, c'est juste attirer l'attention de, comment dirais-je, des organisations, mais aussi de ceux qui sont les porteurs de ce réseau, de pouvoir prendre vraiment en considération pour que cette communauté, ces inondations, peut-être de leur occupation. Donc, c'est un peu ça que je voulais parler parce que depuis voilà, je participe, mais je constate vraiment qu'il y a, comment dirais-je, il n'y a pas la voix à ces groupes de minorités qui peut être aussi quelque part un peu important pour nous dans le cadre de l'évaluation de notre travail, voilà, de tout ce que nous sommes en train de faire. Merci beaucoup. Et si je veux me présenter, parce que voilà, je ne sais pas si tout le monde était là le matin, donc je me nomme Diallo Mamadou, je suis membre de l'association collective des communautés Sahel au Maroc. Aussi, nous travaillons comment dirais-je, dans le domaine de la migration pour tout ce qui concerne, comment dirais-je, l'accompagnement, le référencement, et aussi des volets qui concernent des volets déployés pour l'accès aux différents services sociaux de base, notamment les droits fondamentaux. Donc, voilà un peu ce que je voulais dire. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very, very much for those comments, particularly bringing attention to how organizations and from migrant communities can take part in this process and engage in the role and the work being done in the network. So thank you for your comments as well. Now I think we're going to turn over we've had a request from the floor from, let me see who's next. I think David Corder from the UNDP. Are you there, David? Not seeing whether he can, whether he's been accepted to speak through the system. Is that possible? Ben?
Sorry, Jenna, I think we have Jonathan there and then David.
Sure. Oh, I see. We need to release some mics. Sorry, before we can move on to other speakers. I think that can happen internally.
Thanks, Jenna. I think we have Jonathan Prentice, head of the Network Secretariat, on the floor, ready to speak.
Excellent. Well, we'll turn it over to Jonathan. Go ahead, Jonathan. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jenna, and thank you to Susanna and the other presenters. This is really, it's very exciting, not least because I think this is one of the key asks of the UN system through the GCM, but also because I think the potential that the Migration Network Hub has really is almost limitless. I have two questions. One is the thinking behind how we're going to link in what the establishing country networks are doing and how we will provide platforms for them in the hub. I'd be interested in a bit more information on that. And secondly, I think what we've realized over the last 2 days of the annual meeting is that we may indeed obviously continue with the annual meeting. I think it provides an extremely important platform in the calendar for us, but that there will be a need for a continuous dialogue with stakeholders and other partners as we move forward, and that will be a cake we can cut in many different ways, whether it is thematic issues, whether it is cross-cutting issues, been focused on the guiding principles, whether it is geographically specific issues, and in a bunch of other ways. To what extent can the hub, which of course also comprises the Connection Hub, provide really a centre of excellence where we can bring together the right actors in an agile way to discuss issues as and when they emerge, or even potentially in advance of it. We've discussed in the annual meeting possibly the need for a little more proactive horizon scanning. Is this something that you could see the platform assisting the executive committee and others in facilitating? But again, congratulations, really great piece of work, and thank you.
I think now we'll go to, again, to see if we can have David Coder join with his comments.
Yes, thank you, Jenny. I wasn't able to connect so far. Hello, everybody. I'm David Coder from UNDP. It has been nice to see the evolution of this tool for the last months and even weeks. Lots of improvements. So congrats to the team for the effort, and really it's really visually and in terms of content, it's really very good. My question / comment is about how we are going to make the bridge really with policymakers. I think that migration is really an area where most policies around the world don't rely on evidence-based research. I think that nobody would think of taking decisions in terms of environment, climate change without referring to science. And there are plenty of other topics, but migration, basically, lots of policymakers take their decisions based on their guts, and often their guts are wrong. And on the other hand, we have researchers who are doing a great job. We have lots of evidence on plenty of issues, and it's not used by policymakers. So somehow the knowledge hub, is bridging this gap, and that's great. However, I have the feeling that still it's going to be a tool that mostly practitioners from UN agencies and civil society might use. I'm not sure that policymakers will really go and dig into it to know what kind of policies are really working, or what the science tells us about migration and the best migration policies. So how do you envision to access to policymakers to help them, not just with the hub, because again, it's going to be difficult for them to go there and really dig into it. So how can we and the hub, the team, all the UN agencies, how can we help in that direction? Thanks.
Thank you, David. Suzanne, can I ask you to weigh in now, please?
Sure, and thank you everyone for your feedback. Very positive. Congratulations. That's always very nice to see after all the long work that went into it. I would like to thank also in particular the ambassador from Mexico, and also congratulate you on your work, especially on the data part. As you may know, we're here in Berlin at the Global Migration Data Analysis Center. We do a lot of work on migration data, so it's great that you included migration-related questions in the census. Maybe just to the 2 points raised by Jonathan in terms of the link to the country networks. We're, I believe, in the early stage of thinking about that, but we would definitely need to reach out to the networks. We've done already a bit to the regional ones to see how we can support them, how the Migration Network Hub can support their work, and how what they're doing can be featured there. So that, in a very decentralized way, that this kind of input from also the local, national, and regional level that I mentioned. In terms of the kind of Center of Excellence, that reminded me, I think that's the purpose of those discussion fora. We have 2 at the moment, one on migration digitalization, one was the Voices from the Ground. So those sessions that started with the onset of the pandemic earlier this year. And of course, also for the next annual meeting or other meetings, these discussion fora can really be accompanying those. What we've done with Britta Berendt, as she's mentioned, there were a number of events organized, and we had discussion threads in between those events to see, what are some of the questions, what are some of the experiences by different experts and policymakers working on those topics. And so coming to your point, David, about how to kind of bridge that gap between the policymakers and academia and other experts, I think often it is about where to find information. I've seen in my work with many governments that, as also the ambassador mentioned, there's, a large wealth of information. And if there's a topic that one is not that familiar with, one doesn't really know where to start looking. So I think it can be helpful. And of course, we need to, make a huge effort in terms of outreach and visibility. That will be a key part. But I believe, just having, making that accessible in a more user-friendly way, and not so, that you need to find a report and annex in an Excel file on, clicking 5,000 links. And I think in the needs assessment, someone was saying, you need a GPS sometimes to also navigate some of the UN agencies' websites. And I think those, accompanied discussion fora, there's the champion countries where this is actually planned to see, how their practices, their policies, their measures, how they can be sharing their experiences. So there's already some approaches planned there. And I think, it's important to support governments and see how also this Knowledge Hub, this Migration Network Hub can be interactive and agile and really respond to those needs. And that's why also for us, it's very important to do this pilot testing to see, is that something that, responds to government needs? Would that help them? And I think also in the last session of the annual meeting, the issue of migration governance came up. So more generally, how that can be supported. So I hope that responds to some of the points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Britta?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to support what Susanne said, because I just would like to invite you to be proactive. And for example, when the Global Migration Data Portal was created, for example, we invited the colleagues from IOM and JIMDAC to come to our ministry and present the portal. So we had the whole migration division in the ministry, and JIMDAC was there to present the portal, and this proved to be quite valuable. And I can only invite all of you to do the same thing in the other states. So just present the thing and be proactive and get in touch with the ministries so that they are able to know where to find the information. Thanks.
Well, thank you to everyone for your participation. I see we have already run out of time just about. So wanted to make sure that those that had been involved in the panel, if they had any other last thoughts or closing remarks, please, you're welcome to offer them now.
Yes, thank you very much. I think this is as I said, a very relevant tool. And now, as I want to simply echo what Susan said about the importance of using the data. I think there is always a lot, particularly in the last years, we have been hearing a lot of noise regarding migration, but there is a reality. And I think when policies are being developed, they have to be based in data. They have to be based in data because that is a reality that governments want to face. And as we have always said, the GCM is such an important agreement that will be implemented by countries gradually, depending of their own national situations. And I think that when countries want to address an issue and want to really be effective, the only thing they can do is to rely on data. And Mexico relies on data. I mentioned some of the examples, and I think it's very relevant to have a tool like the platform that is being presented today, because it gives you a lot of information, and then you can use it, but you cannot impose it on those countries that are not convinced. I think the idea of having the champions countries getting involved and trying not only to liaise with the platform and to help in providing data, but also in using those data from policies, I think it's a way that the platform itself will prove its value. So and as was mentioned, now it's important to make sure that we build the bridges, that we make sure that the information is there, that is sound, that is used by those countries that are willing to use it. And I'm sure it's going to be successful, because at the end, we need to deal with migration, and we need to make sure that migration benefits all. And the only way to do that is by using and designing policies that are based on data. They will continue to be policies that are made for different purposes, but if we want to achieve the objectives of the GCM, we have to rely on data, and there are many things that can be done, and I just want to highlight again the importance that Mexico gives to the agenda of migration, and our willingness to continue working as a champion country, but also to make sure that these tools are used. And the best way to do it is that we in Mexico use the data, and this is something that we do often, and that is why I presented some of the examples of the data that we produce and that we also will be bridging with the platform. So thank you again for this launching. Congratulations for your work, and I'm sure we will see the benefits in the coming years. Thank you again.
Thank you again, Ambassador. I think these are really important points to highlight, and no doubt the hub will be vital to realizing Objective 1 and data sharing, but also just broadly for the compact realization. I'm going to turn the floor over now to Suzanne and Ben, if they'd like to make some final comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ambassador. again for those words. I would, in line with the people-centered approach of the GCM, I would just like to say a few words of thanks, of course, to the working group who's behind this platform, all the 19 UN agencies who've provided, who've mapped content and provided peer review, all the peer reviewers themselves, of course, the experts. And I would like to thank in particular my team behind the scenes. We have Bethany and Barish, who has actually translated what we needed into the words of IT colleagues so they could understand what was needed. Asha, Francisco, and Esther, who've helped to upload all those resources. We have, I think, almost 700 on there, so we could show them to you today. And in particular, So-Young and Juliana, who joined the team just a few months ago, jumped right into the deep water and were super enthusiastic about the whole process, so thanks a lot. And in particular, also our IT colleagues, Madeline and Judy, and I know Judy, who's based in Manila in the Philippines, is still online kindly to help us make sure that everything went smoothly tonight. So thanks a lot, Judy, also for all your work and for being available. And of course to the Secretariat colleagues, Asra, Florence, Mohammed, and all the others, Jonathan, of course, as well, also for the financial support. So just to say that this has been a huge team effort, and we're very excited about all your positive feedback and look forward to improving it further and moving it forward. Thank you.
Well, I think that there's no more interventions from the panelists or from the floor. We'll just wrap up by saying a resounding thank you to everyone, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. It has been quite an engaging couple of days, and I'm really excited to see what's in store in 2021. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks very much, everyone.